Welcome back into the podcast. Excited to do this. He was nice enough to come on during the season, and it was the most listened to podcast that we did for the entire season. He had some great information, great things to say about the evaluation process of Justin Fields and Caleb Williams and the whole roster for that matter. So I thought it'd be really good to have him on again to kind of talk about what went into an NFL offseason, how a football operations team gets from point A to point B, from the end of the season evaluations to how to improve the roster for the upcoming season. He is Josh Lucas, of course, the Chicago Bears former director of player personnel, and he joins me now. Josh, Bill Zimmerman, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back, and I appreciate the shout out of the number one listened to podcast of the 23 season. That's pretty cool.
That was, hey, you had some great stuff, and of course you had some big things to say about Caleb Williams. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the Justin Fields Caleb Williams conversation's been a bit of a hot one for a few months. So, but yeah,
that's everyone making it a bit of a hot conversation. The media needs stuff to write about and stuff to click on. They already know what they're doing.
Gotcha. Well, we'll get into that here in a little bit, but before we get into kind of how an off season works, and if you haven't heard Josh on Hogan Johns, he did basically what would be like a quadruple podcast. They talked about the offense and defense and went through evaluations. So if you haven't checked that out, I would check that out. It's really well done and it's really informative. But I don't want to mimic that, but I want to kind of build off that. So when you're with the player personnel department and you're working with the GM and looking at the evaluation process, like, is that one where it's really, I assume it's an ongoing process throughout the entire season, but kind of what is that process like for the football operations, the last couple weeks of the season into the last, the first week of the off season, so to speak?
Yeah. So once, within the season, you're going to have in-house scouts who are not only monitoring the other 31 teams and their free agents, doing advanced work for your upcoming opponent, but they're also going to be in charge of one or two positions of your own roster. So they're mastering the O-line on the Bears roster, so they know it the best. And so when the season ends, you have all kinds of meetings that are going to start. The first meeting generally is that post your own team evaluation, kind of what we did on that podcast with Adam and Johns. It's really just to kind of set an outline. It's not a end all be all meeting. Things definitely change post that meeting. There's a lot of guys that are kind of left stuck in are they a 3 average good enough, or are they a 6? We really just need to get rid of them and move on. And sometimes some of those decisions take weeks, depending on what's coming up in your free agency meetings, and then as well as what that position may look like in the draft. That's the first meeting that kickstarts everything. The second thing that'll happen normally, and every team might do this a little bit differently,
sure,
is you're going to have your initial free agency meeting. And throughout the entire season, your in-house guys have built a free agency board. They've graded every single UFA. We also looked at every roster and had our cap guy assess who are guys that are likely to get cut. So most cap guys probably would have said to other teams, hey, I would put Cody Whitehair on their free agent list, and I would put Eddie Jackson on their free agent list because these guys are likely to get cut. So our in-house scouts are grading every single one of those guys. And then we have a board built base grade from highest to lowest. That initial meeting is to set the list of players that your coaches need to watch. your coach doesn't have time. He could if you really wanted him to, but it's not efficient to give your coach 26 tight ends that are free agents. Give them the 5 to 7 that you have some conviction on, that would make sense fiscally, and that are guys you would be excited to add to your roster. To me, it's this tricky, it really is a tricky, delicate balance, because the last thing in the world you want is, it's 2024 season. It's week 4, and this tight end is balling for some team in the NFL, and he was a UFA, and you didn't have him on your coach's list to watch because you just didn't think he fit or whatever. So you really want to narrow the list. It gives the coach more time to spend on each individual prospect, but you also you got to be careful not to make it too narrow, and leave somebody off that could potentially help you. So that's what you're doing in that first meeting. And then you're also giving those same target guys at each position to your general manager as well, because he doesn't have time to watch every single UFA. He needs to be able to watch, 5 to 8, depending on the position, top guys that make sense, that fiscally you could do it, the contract makes sense. And that's how you kind of begin to narrow down the pool of kind of who you're going to talk to at the combine and their agents, and then obviously who you're going to make offers to. So that's kind of how the free agency, from a free agency standpoint, that's how that works. And then going on simultaneously, you're working to the draft. So January is All-Star Week month, and you guys saw last month Senior Bowl concluded it. There's still the East West game, the Players Association game, whatever the names of them are. There's like 4 or 5 of them still. Your scouts are at every one of those games. You're getting quality time with the players. You're seeing who the outliers are, the guys that jump out, and also the guys that just show you they're just not good enough. And you get a lot of that at some of the smaller games where the talent's not as great. And then as soon as February wraps around, almost every team in the NFL brings in all their scouts into what we would call front board meetings for the upcoming draft. Some teams now let guys stay home and do it by Zoom, which I find interesting.
So is this just college scouting, or this is everybody?
This is college.
Okay.
Now your pro scouts, the hay's in the barn. Like, they've done all their work. They've presented the free agency stuff. It's over. Like, for them, they're done. Like, from that, once they present and those lists are handed to the coaches, it's your coaches and your GM and your personnel executives are going to steer the ship from there. So your pro scouts now have empty plates, and they will get involved in the college draft, and they'll be given, usually maybe it's just a position. Maybe you give a guy that one of your pro scouts. I know Chris White, is still there as a pro scout. He was really good with O-linemen. So we would just give him every O-lineman in the college draft to watch, and he would sit in our meetings and participate. But everyone in the league in February is having front board meetings, and you're going through every guy that has a draftable grade for your team. And your GM is going to be in the room. All your personnel people are going to be in the room, and you want your head coach to be in the room. You don't get him for every meeting, for every minute, for every hour. Ryan would be very deliberate and knowing when, like, hey, I really want Matt or Coach Fox to be in here for these 3 wide receivers or these 3 defensive tackles. Josh, what time do you think we'll get to those guys today to make sure they're in the room for that part? Because they're not in there for that whole thing. That process usually takes about 2 weeks to go through every guy, because you're talking about their character. You're talking about all their background. You're talking about what they do on the field, why they would be a good Bear. And you got to remember, multiple people have graded each player, and each person gets a chance to speak. So you can talk over an hour on one guy, and we're talking 200 to 300 guys on your front board. So you can imagine the laborious nature of that. Now, some teams are watching film while they're doing this, and they're literally watching a game, 2 games, maybe 3 games on each guy, and they're collectively talking through it as they go. I've never been a part of a regime that worked it that way. I personally don't find it beneficial in the long run to the decision making, because you're watching limited tape. I think people's certain voices in the room can dominate other people's voices, and I think the work's already been done on the tape evaluation part. It is a great chance for people in the room to see everyone. There's definitely benefits to it. There's teams that do this that draft great year in and year out. So I'm definitely not knocking the process. I'm just giving you my personal opinion of it. And at the end of those 2 weeks, however you skin it, whether you're watching tape, whether you're just talking about the people individually, you're doing the same thing. You're building the list of guys that your coaches need to watch. Now, this is another tricky one where you're talking college wide receiver, guys that have height, weight, speed for the NFL in a college draft class. There's easily every year 25, 35 of these guys, if not more. And, it can be a little unfair to the wide receiver coach that you hand them a plate of 40 guys, and the tight end coach, he's got 8 guys, because the tight end list is getting shorter and shorter every year. Your offensive line coach gets bombarded.
Oh, I can imagine.
Gets bombarded with a big list. But at the end of the day, what we would do is we would solidify the lists of the players the coaches are going to watch, the players we're going to interview at the combine. We would do that during that week. It used to be 50. I don't know if it's up now to 60 interviews, but you could only get so many 15 minutes slotted. So we would build that list as we go. We would take guys off the board for character reasons and for medical reasons as we went through that process. Try to shrink the board down to the best of your ability. There's always a lot of fat on the end. I think a lot of scouts, especially young scouts, which if you look around the league right now, a lot of these staffs are really, really young. They're just hiring really information gatherers. There's not a ton of evaluators out there running around as scouts right now. They get a little scared to put a free agent grade on somebody. I'm going to put a 7th round grade on this guy. Somebody might draft him. I really wouldn't draft him. Well, screw that. I don't want the guy you really don't want to draft. Like, if you don't want to draft him, put a free agent grade on him. So you'll get a bloated board in the 6th and 7th round. And really, those guys all end up being college free agents. Now you got to be careful again, like all these things. I remember doing this process in New Orleans, and and I don't want the receiver's name is slipping my mind right now. But we were doing this and we were like, hey, there's way too many names down here. Come on, guys, really? And our boss was up front and was going through a stack of receiver names, like 5'10", runs 4.65. Are you serious? Let's put him on the free agent board. Then we got to it was a receiver from Mount Union who ended up being a pretty good player in the league, and I cannot think of his name right now. It's at the tip of my tongue. But he did the same thing. He was like, Mount Union, like seriously, Division III, this guy's going to play in the NFL. And we dropped him down to the backboard, and the dude ended up getting drafted and being a really good receiver.
Is it Pierre Garçon?
Pierre Garçon, yeah. Pierre Garçon, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, just
thinking about the little one that was from Cleveland, Ohio, that ended up going to the Jaguars. That's the guy that's the name, but I knew it wasn't him. I knew it was the other one.
All right, so that was a ton of information. Appreciate you kind of going through all that. So how difficult is it? Because I know you don't want to be going into the draft with just gaping needs, right? And I know you want to try and get those filled as much as you can in free agency. So, like, and I'll use this current Bears roster as an example. If Darnell Mooney doesn't return, and it doesn't seem like to me that he would, you've got DJ Moore and Tyler Scott. I don't see Tyler Scott right now as anything more than a wide receiver 4. I don't think you can rely on him for more than that. So knowing you have a couple holes at receiver that need to be filled this off season, is that, at 9, they may have a good chance at a receiver there. I heard Dane Brugler say that he thinks the top 3 receivers are all going to be gone before 9. So how do you balance trying to find where you're going to get quality players in the first, second round, maybe find a really good one in the 3rd or 4th round that can give you serious snaps in year 1 on the offensive or defensive side of the ball? How do you balance that with free agency?
Yeah, so obviously you're trying to, you've heard me use the term before, green magnets. We throw the depth chart up there, and anywhere we had a green magnet, that's where the need was. So it could be starting left tackle. It could be 3rd tight end, and you try to address as many needs as you can, obviously, in free agency. And the key to the whole thing, and I didn't learn this until with experience and having more reps at it, is just to be patient. Every team's going to have voids. You just watch 2 teams play in a Super Bowl. There's plenty guys on those starting rosters that are just guys. You know what I mean? Like, just guys. Like, obviously you need the superstars to win championships, but no one has a roster of 22 all pros or all stars.
Sure.
So like, you're going to have voids. Be patient. Get as many addressed as you can in free agency. And then, to me, the 1st round and the 2nd round, you take the best player available, and if it strikes a major need and it's close, you maybe tip to the need. The thing I would do if I ever was in charge of a draft again is really, as soon as the 2nd round is over, you throw away your needs board. Just take football players. Just take good football players. They will be on your team. Strengths go to weaknesses so fast in this league. Weaknesses become strengths so fast in this league. I go back to the 2019 draft, and people from my past will probably get upset for me saying this. We went into that draft with only a 3rd round pick and beyond.
And everyone knew you were taking a running back.
And it made me sick. Like, it made me like really? Like, one, we have a good one in Jordan Howard that, the coach just didn't care for. And 2, like, there's so many good players on the board. Look at some of those players that got drafted after we took David Montgomery. Not that David wasn't a good player, and I'm glad we had him, and he's still playing well from Detroit. But like to me, the third round and on, like just take guys you love, take guys that you just have conviction and passion in the building, and if you're like, well, we already have 5 receivers that we know we're going to make the team, like, you know, are we going to keep 6 and take this guy in the 4th round? Yeah, keep 6. Because guess what? When you get to the final cut, guess how many teams have 53 players that are all really good? None. No one. So you just stay heavy and keep heavy at the positions that you're strong at. But in the 1st round, obviously, you know, if that were your situation, you know, specifically Mooney walks, you don't have any luck signing a premier starter. You don't get Mike Evans or whoever else is you know, going to be out there as a legit wide receiver free agent, and you're rolling in there with DJ Moore, Tyler Scott, and the rest of the bunch. I would say, you know, where they're picking and knowing how talented those 3 guys are, there could be some heavy consideration on making sure you get one of those 3 guys, no matter how you have to do it. If you fear that they're going to go before you, you're on the phones making sure you know what you need to do to go up spots, you know, prior to the draft starting. I personally think one of the 3 will be there. But they do have that luxury this year of they need a wide receiver big time. And not only is there 3, there's a bunch of good receivers in this draft.
Yeah, deep class.
I think these 3 guys are probably as clean as you can get as far as like not missing on them, because they're all bigger guys that can catch through contact, and they're playmakers, and they score a lot of touchdowns. Like they have all the requisites to not be busts.
So, but before I get to a couple other things, I just want to ask you, since you were kind of talking about the draft process and you know, the 2019 draft specifically, but overall, the Ryan Pace regime, I think when you look at the drafts, the 4th and 5th round, you guys hit time and time again. You Tariq Cohen, Eddie Jackson, Adrian Amos, Jordan Howard, Bilal Nichols, Nick Kwiatkowski. You know, there's the, you know, more and more. Like there's a bunch of guys. What was it, do you think, about that room and the regime? Was it Ryan just picking the right guys? Was it someone that was, you know, because it wasn't like one position, right? You had a lot of success in the secondary, but you found a couple secondary pieces, running back, linebacker. There were so many different pieces you found. What was it about kind of those later on, not 7th round where I understand it's kind of like a lottery ticket, but what was it about those rounds where you guys why you had so much success?
You know, I mean, a lot of things went into it. I think might have been a little bit more collaborative, you know, as you work through those rounds. You know, those top picks are going to be, you know, really controlled by, you know, your GM and your head coach and your personnel director. And as you get through that 3rd round and into the 4th and 5th and 6th, you know, I think you're bringing your scouts into it a little bit more. Hey, who do you guys really have conviction on? Like, it almost goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. It's almost like you're stop worrying about fixing a depth chart magnet thing, and you're just looking for really good players. And I think we had a handful of guys that were really good evaluators. It could have been a lot better. We were, I won't get into every pick, but there was a couple that, you know, if we would have went the other way, where it was like a 50-50 split and we went one way and the other way would have been much better. And I'm sure that happens with every team. But I thought we were always well prepared and thorough, and we had a lot of scouts. I think one of the advantages of having a really young GM and a young personnel director is that I think scouts were a little more confident and not as afraid to stand up on the table. And Ryan did a really, really good job of like, hey, like, I don't get, like, if you don't like them, you don't like them. And just give me the guys you really, really want. Like, he would really challenge our guys to find those guys in the late rounds. And our guys took a lot of pride in it, and they did a really good job with it. And you got to bring in coaching too. Some of those guys were coaches, I'm thinking, and all the way to the undrafted free agents.
Yeah, you guys had success there too, Bryce Callahan.
That was my area, and I get hired here, and I'm in Rice all the time when I was in New Orleans because I lived in Dallas, and I loved Bryce. I'm still pissed that we didn't take Bryce in the 7th round. The reason we didn't take him is because we thought of the two guys, and with my relationship with Bryce and his agent, and our guys talking to Bryce and his agent, we felt really good if he went undrafted, he was going to sign with us, and we didn't have as good of a relationship with the other player. We still got him. Roy Robertson Harris.
That's another good one. Yep.
That's one guy, Francis St. Paul, who's still a scout for the Bears. He's their West Coast over the top scout. All Francis. Like, he came up to me in March and was like, I got a guy. I don't think he's going to get drafted, and we're getting him. And by the time we signed him after the draft, Francis had, been out to dinner with him and his future wife, and like the amount of work he did to secure and make sure we got this one guy, and little luck sometimes with the Harvard connection with Broniker, and just sometimes it is luck. And, obviously we had our misses too on the back end, but, I think honestly, if overriding, I think it was just when it felt like when the 4th round started, it became like more of the entire room's draft, and less the guy sitting in the front draft, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, before I let you go, because I have a few more things I want to get with you, let me ask you kind of some specifics about that relate to the team this year. And the most intriguing one, I think, for a lot of people, not quarterback, but is center, because obviously that's a need. That's something they need to address. If there is a rookie quarterback, and we'll get into quarterback here in a minute, but if there's a rookie quarterback, I feel like having a veteran center there would make a lot of sense, and that it's worth the spend. I know there's a couple really good center prospects this year that are going to go late round 1, early round 2. We don't know if they're going to have another pick in that range. How is if you're going to have a rookie quarterback, because obviously you guys did it with Trubisky, like, what is the best approach at center?
What you just said is dead on, because it happened to us. Because we drafted James Daniels with the intention of being a center and a center only. We never envisioned him being a guard because of some of the anchor issues and some of the things we thought he did better at center. But we got into that whether it was his first year and Mitch's second year. And
yeah, that's in 2018. Yep.
Whenever it was, there was a point in time where Mitch started being vocal towards the coaching staff, saying he just felt more comfortable with Cody, and James was a puppy when we drafted him. He was like a 21-year-old true 3-year junior coming out of Iowa, and he was a puppy. He was like a baby deer. Like, his body wasn't filled out maturity wise, like he wasn't a man yet. Like, when he left us, he still had some issues as a player, but like he was an NFL offensive lineman. Obviously he got paid some money. He's still starting in the league. But he was much more of a kid, and we had to start playing him at guard. So that what you're saying is real. And if you don't solve this, they will have a vet center in position to play before the draft. Might not be who Bears Nation wants it to be. It might be a down the line guy that's just kind of a Band-Aid.
Another version of Lucas Patrick.
Exactly. And guess what? There's a bunch of guys like that available throughout the league. So they'll sign the one they like the best. He'll be the starting center. And then if they draft a center until that guy's ready to play, it does make a big difference for the quarterback, because you can have the vet center. You can put more on him as far as ID and, Mike IDs and protections. And the less you can put on the rookie quarterback mentally, the better he's going to play. So that would be interesting if the dynamic set up where they took a quarterback one and maybe a center in the second round. And there's different levels of centers coming out from maturity, vocal leadership. There's guys that are ready to do it right away, and there's guys that need time. And so they're going to have to be cognizant of that. And they'll know that. They'll know everything. Any center they're about to take, like, they'll know that right away. We drafted Hronis Grasu in the third round because of all that stuff. And he had all that stuff. We thought he had enough in his body to be a functional starting center in the NFL, and he just wasn't big and tough enough.
The strength, right?
He did, and what we saw on Oregon tape, we thought there'd be a little more developmental upside there. We thought he was strong enough playing against good competition, but at the end of the day, he just didn't have the power. And some guys that don't have the power, that are a little bit smaller, you go back to a guy like Olin Kreutz, can make up for it with just their sheer tenacity and nasty and toughness. Hronis had all the intangibles as far as, being able to run a huddle, being able to help a young quarterback, even from an early standpoint. He just didn't have the physical and the nastiness and that dog in him that he needed to survive. I hate to say it, but he too nice of a guy. Sometimes you want him to be a little more edgy, have a little more shit in their neck, and sometimes nice guys that don't have that switch, it can be a problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember we used to have a guy, Grant Wistrom, the defensive end, if you remember him, and he always used to talk about how he had this amazing switch. He was such this mild-mannered, low-key guy, but he just knew how to flip this switch and just had a motor that wouldn't quit when he got on the field, and he had a successful career because of it. So I get that. That makes a lot of sense. So let me make sure I get to the quarterback position, because we're going to run out of time and not address the elephant in the room. And you brought it up early in the interview that you're like, that they know what they're going to do. And whether it's the media, I think a lot of this is being driven by the fan base, because Justin is just so popular in Chicago. There's just a lot of fans that just don't want to let go. And, I'm with you. I think the decision is made, and I think they're certainly marching in one direction. I know they got to get to the combine and meet and work out, and there's a lot of steps to go still before they can be 100% certain what they're going to do, and if they are going to draft Caleb Williams. But for me, with Justin, the one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough, that I feel played a big part in this, is the financial component with him. Because to me, if you are Justin Fields' agent and his team, and you're sitting down with Ryan Poles and whoever else to talk contract extension, and you're like, okay, you committed to Justin and you passed on Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, all for my guy. You clearly want him around, and you're not getting him for a Geno Smith, 3-year, $90 million contract. He's going north of Daniel Jones. You're going to have to pay him $45 to $50 million a year. And I just don't feel that this Bears regime is comfortable doing that.
There's nothing to warrant or justify those numbers to pay.
But don't you feel that would be the ask?
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm with you. Yeah, that's why anytime I speak on a podcast or radio, TV, Caleb Williams doesn't come out of my mouth without me saying with a rookie contract, because I know what that Justin Fields contract is going to look like. And look, I still think he can get a little bit better. You can win with Justin with a good enough team around him. But he does not go out there and win games for you. It's amazing to me, being part of both of them, having drafted Mitch and then having drafted Justin, like those first 3 years in the league, like Mitch's numbers are better in every single passing category.
Yeah, they are.
The win-loss record, not even close. We won a division. Obviously, I'm not dumb. I know we didn't win a division because of Mitch. We won a division because of our defense. But we won a division. Mitch took us to the playoffs twice. I clearly knew Mitch wasn't good enough. We really missed because of who we didn't take. And not only that he wasn't good enough, but also who we didn't take. I'm well aware of that. But it is crazy to me to think the lens of Justin after 3 years versus the lens of Mitch after 3 years. It's wild to believe that they're that different. When at the end of the day, like, Justin just hasn't performed beyond his legs and his ability to run. He has not performed well enough in the pocket to even consider those numbers financially.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the other thing that I keep seeing is, now, and we're hearing Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter talking about the historic haul that it would take for the Bears to move to number one. And that's getting a lot of fans to be like, okay, you can trade with New England and you can get 3 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks and all this stuff. And to me, I look at that and I see it as, this is the insiders saying how much Ryan Poles wants to stay at number one. This is not the insiders saying this is how much the Commanders want to come up, the Raiders want to come up, the Falcons want to come up. We're not hearing that. I'm sure they do with a prospect. We're not hearing that these teams want to give up massive amounts of capital. The only thing I've heard from Washington beat writers is that they probably aren't willing to give up what it would take to just swap a spot to get their hometown kid. So, like, I'm looking at these insiders saying this as, this is them basically saying the Bears want to be at 1 and select a quarterback, even though I think a lot of fans are interpreting it as, oh, we're going to get even more than we got for Bryce Young.
Yeah, you got to be very careful, but Adam Schefter, who's the guy you just said?
Ian
Rappaport. Look, they're being fed information. They're buddy with every agent in the league. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Any information that they're shooting out there is trying to help somebody out. And no different than you said. I'm sure that's it. That's Bears brass talking, letting people know that, it would take an ungodly amount of ammunition to come up and get them. And you're exactly right. We don't know. There's still, I think, a lot of teams that are more scared of Caleb after this year and see him less likely as that without a doubt home run Hall of Famer, and who really, really wants to come up. no one knows other than those teams. So, like, the whole draft is so funny. Doing it on this side and listening to stuff, because when I was in the office, like from January to April, like I like my earplugs, like no reason. It doesn't benefit me from talking to any media and giving anyone any information. And obviously, you talk among some other scouts in the league, and you know what's what generally, but like there's just going to be a lot of smoke coming up, in these next few weeks regarding this whole situation.
All right, last thing for you then, because we've been going for 40 minutes here. I don't want to let you go. I don't want to keep you too long. Justin Fields, assuming they do trade him this off season. I know Ryan Poles made the move for the number 1 pick early, because he said he wanted to, make sure he knew what he needed before he had free agency, and he was able to get DJ Moore. So that made a lot of sense. For Fields, does it make sense to try and move him before free agency? So this team, that acquires him says, all right, we're set at quarterback. We don't need to pursue Cousins or Mayfield or Jake Browning or whoever it might be, or, worrying about the draft, first round, quarterbacks in the draft. When does it make sense, as someone who's been in the personnel offices a long time, does it make sense to make a trade like that?
Yeah, to me, it'd be before free agency. I think that's just because that's when the demand is going to be the highest. If you were to wait till after the draft, obviously there's several of these teams that are probably interested in trading Justin Fields that might get their needs met in the first round with some of these down the line quarterbacks, or not, I shouldn't say down the line, some of these first, second round prospect quarterbacks. And I think the peak of his, value is going to come right before free agency starts and teams start spending money and making moves. So I would agree with you. That would be probably when they're going to do it. There's that wild scenario that you keep them and take Caleb.
Wouldn't that be terrible for the locker room?
It can be fucking, sorry, excuse my
language. That's all right.
It can be absolutely divisive and explosive, or they could meet each other and respect each other, and real knows real. They both know how talented they are, and I don't know what kind of personality Caleb Williams has, but I heard horror stories about what happened with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts as a rookie, as far as really dividing the locker room, getting guys on guys' side. I've seen it in the Bears building, obviously. So you don't know what's going to happen. If you took that part out of it and you just said, hey, like, we're not focused on the dynamic of the team as far as relationships go, just what's best for Caleb. The NFL is flat out showing us it's unbelievably beneficial to sit. I mean, from Love in Green Bay, from Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, like, it's extremely beneficial for a quarterback to be able to sit. You would have a chance that have Justin perform even better and give you more of leverage in a trade going forward. It's not crazy to think out. But if you think that it could combust, if you think that the people in the locker love Justin so much, which that may be true because Justin's a very
seems to be the case,
likable guy, and they're going to kind of like shun off Caleb, you just never know. Justin wasn't great his rookie year. We thought having 2 vets with him would really help him with Andy and Nick, and that was not cohesive at all. the part I kind of liked about it is Justin knew he was the best and should be out there. But the part you don't like about it is there's a teachable moment in every point of practice. There's teachable moments in the building during the day, how you carry yourself as a quarterback. There are teachable moments at press conferences. There's teachable moments every snap on Sunday. And when you got two guys that have won as much as Nick and seen as much as Andy, and you don't take that information in because you're a little standoffish and a little abrasive, you're wasting that opportunity. So it would be risky from a team dynamic standpoint, but if you think it out and let Caleb sit for a year and you're still continuing to build your team, and you get another year of Justin on a cheap deal, it's not the craziest thing.
All right. And if they don't do that and they do trade him, I mean, I don't know if you can take a guess. Does a second round pick seem reasonable? That's what everyone keeps saying. A second round pick would be what they could get for him.
I think if they got a second round pick based on his career, when you just watch the tape and see where he struggles, there's alarming stuff. We've talked about it all year, and it's 3 years of it. So, how much better is it going to get? And you have to be in on using his legs to make him who he is. When you factor all that in, I think second round is absolutely the highest they could get. If they pulled off a first round, that's another just
start making the Ryan Poles statue now.
Yeah, with that deal he got last year and the deal, if he were to get a first round for Justin Fields, I think if they got a second or even a third round pick for him, you would be happy with that.
All right. Well, I don't want to. I could talk to you for another hour, but
I got time if you want to go.
That's all right. We can only keep the podcast so long. That's all right. So there he is, Josh Lucas, former director of player personnel for the Chicago Bears. Josh, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and hope to talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Bill.